Warning, we are not your attorneys. Please, don't take anything we say as legal advice. I'm Geoff.
I'm Mike.
And I'm Derrick.
And you are listening to the Not So Grand Jury,
which is still sponsored by Moore Law PLLC. All right, so welcome everyone. We are diving into, honestly, one of my favorite shows. So this was actually a fun one to dive into. We are talking about Scrubs. And specifically, we have decided to talk about Season 4, Episodes 9 and 10, Episode 9 being My Malpractice Decision, Episode 10 being My Female Trouble, which heavily revolves around a medical malpractice attorney named Nina Broderick, who basically comes in and causes all sorts of hell, which is honestly kind of a lot of fun. Before I get into the fact summary, thoughts on Juliana Margulies' character?
I don't have strong thoughts on this character. The show itself gave me some warm memories and brought back some warm, fuzzy feelings. This particular character doesn't really do anything for me. The highlight of the character is JD being madly, not even madly in love, just like madly in love with the idea of touching a human being.
Yeah, that was strange.
No, but it fits the character.
Sure. As far as her as an attorney, she interacts far too much with the medical staff.
Yes, considering they have representation, yes.
Yeah, I mean, even if she's not currently suing anybody in the hospital, like, as an attorney, you don't want to make yourself a fact witness in a case. And spending a bunch of time having verbal sparring with various doctors that you may or may not be bringing a case against is not a great idea.
I'm on a scavenger hunt, and I need to find a black-haired, soulless bottom feeder.
Oh, hi, Nina.
How ironic, because what I need is a burned-out, permed-up doctor with a God complex and a drinking problem.
I wonder how we never see how she is with clients. She is super abrasive and openly manipulative, but also we don't know when she's being genuine, when she's being not. And that's like in the text of the show. It was a very strange representation of a malpractice attorney.
Yeah, it's strange for trial. Now, granted, I have been up against lawyers of that ilk where they portray this extremely aggressive intensity.
Put the mask on.
Right.
Yeah. I am not
and in
like
fact,
I am with you guys if I'm talking to a government attorney. That's not, yeah.
Sure. Well, and listen, there's times where I have had, and in fact, I've had to do this myself, I've basically had to say to opposing counsel, I am not normally an asshole, but I'm going to be an asshole because of the situation we find ourselves in. I have been hired to be extremely aggressive and extremely intense, and you're going to get that. So, but I think she certainly portrays that of this is how I act. I have to be aggressive. I have to be intense. But like you said, she's being aggressive and intense on things that don't make any sense. She's only basically wasting her time. But anyway, I immediately got us off, which is always a good thing that when we're off on a side tangent before I even started, let me at least do the sort of fact recap. So brief recap. First on episode 9, My Malpractice Decision. Guest attorney Nina Broderick, played by Juliana Margulies, is we find out is daughter of one of the hospital's patients. She's also a supposedly very formidable medical malpractice attorney. Basically, she arrives into the hospital with Ted. One of my favorite parts of the episode is very early on, with Ted being like, "We're all gonna die.
We're all going to die!"
Because apparently when she comes in, despite the fact that she has never been on Scrubs for 3.5 seasons, but apparently she comes in regularly enough for them to know her and be afraid of her. And she basically unsettles, it looks like she unsettles JD. She certainly unsettles Dr. Cox, even though he claims he doesn't really care. It is clear they acted differently because she's around. We'll get into it in a little bit. They could easily kick her out of the hospital with no problem. We'll get that later. But anyway, that's a whole other thing. So anyway, Dr. Kelso pressures the hospital staff to be very careful because she's present, and they clearly are making different decisions because of her. As a separate plot point, Elliot is tasked with keeping Doug, which, just so you're aware, ChatGPT refers to him as a somewhat bumbling young doctor. Which I don't think is the apt description. I think he's just a bad
very
doctor.
generous. When you have causes of death named after you, you're probably not a good doctor, or you're a really good doctor.
Right. Upstairs, they refer to that as a Doug. That's also a great line. Elliot's basically tasked with keeping Doug away from Nina to hopefully not cause additional liability. And basically a good chunk of episode 9 is Nina's trying to pressure JD and Cox to do a certain medical procedure on her father, which sort of causes different tension. Then we jump into episode 10, My Female Trouble, where we get into I think it's at the end of 9, we find out that she is now representing Harvey Korman. Great name. Still not sure if it's a Corman or Korman. The internet is confusing on that.
Richard Kine's character.
That Richard Kine's character. And Richard Kine is a phenomenal actor, and I almost love everything he does. He apparently meets Nina in the hospital where she shakes his hand, finds out he's a hypochondriac, gives him her card, and then he obviously calls her to represent him. And he files a lawsuit against presumably Turk and the hospital. We just know it's against Turk, but the fact that Dr. Kelso is available is there probably means the hospital is involved. The lawsuit continues. Now that Nina, who's dating JD, because of course that's how that works in Scrubs, is that we got to add the romantic element to all of this to the extent there's any romanticism in that relationship. Korman claims his tennis skills have deteriorated because of surgical complications with his shoulder. He lost his zip, yes.
I just came from the courts. It's been 6 weeks since you did my shoulder surgery, and my serve still has no pop. No zip, I tell you.
Correct. There's no zip.
Is
no
his
pop.
character's name really Harvey Korman?
Please, call me Harvey. Harvey Korman?
Doesn't get me as much action as you'd think. Anyway, about that free medical care.
Okay.
Is this a reference to something I'm not getting?
Harvey Korman was a comedian. I think he was on the Carol Burnett show way back when.
Oh, okay.
Before any of us were born, basically.
Gotcha. Okay. Well,
correct. Yeah, I will say they make it out to be a big thing in Scrubs. This was a 2004 release. He passed away in 2008 and was already like 80 years old. So it's not like this is a...
Yeah, but Richard Kind is also probably 50 years old in the episode, so maybe when he was younger it would have been more relevant.
Yeah, it's possible. It's possible. But anywho, to sort of finish it off, JD being in the relationship with Nina causes some complications in between not only professional decisions, but his loyalty to his roommate and best friend Turk, who's being sued by her. Well, her client is suing him. Elliot gets a sexist patient, Mr. Summers, who assumes Dr. Elliot Reed must be a male doctor, and eventually she enlists the janitor to dress as fake Dr. Reed, which sort of leads to absurd results.
And we should note that guy is a board member of the hospital too. Yeah,
completely normal. This is just how you played board members, apparently. And then finally, although it's not necessarily relevant to what we're going to be talking about, apparently JD can't break up with Nina, so he has to enlist Dr. Cox's wife, Jordan, to help him out with that. So yeah, interesting 2 episodes. The themes of the episode, if we really dive in, are kind of insane. Like, I think it's supposed to be sort of a whole thing about strong, independent women in relationships, but it's a sort of weird way to get there. The first thing when I started watching this episode and I remember I think we had talked about this before we even picked the episode, how no one knows what HIPAA means or what it does or what's a HIPAA violation or can you ask for things? And I think this is actually the perfect episode to sort of bring up those conversations because Lord knows during the middle of COVID, everything was a HIPAA violation.
Yeah. Asking to see your vaccine card, HIPAA violation. Taking your temperature when you're going into a building, HIPAA violation.
So Geoff, take it away.
Sure. And
Talk
let me
to us
preface
about
this with none of the three of us on here are HIPAA experts, but it doesn't take much to read the statute and get a sense of what is allowed and what is not allowed. So I want to preface this by saying HIPAA is a huge statute. This is, by the way, the Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act. One way to know someone absolutely doesn't know what they're talking about when it comes to HIPAA is when they spell it HIPPA, because that is not the statute. It is HIPAA. So this is a huge statute. We're only going to talk about a couple little parts. But, those couple little parts are kind of the core of the health information portability and accountability bit of the bill. This was passed into law under Clinton in 1996. This episode aired in 2004, so HIPAA was in effect. This was all binding on doctors when this episode went to air, just so everyone's on the same page. So what does HIPAA do? HIPAA prohibits covered entities, essentially medical providers, either individual doctors or nurses, hospitals, healthcare facilities, and health insurers from disclosing personal health information without authorization. It was designed to make it easier in the internet age for health insurers, doctors, hospitals to communicate patients' information, necessary patients' information, and regulated to make sure that when they do, it is secure and you're not, exposing people's private information to the public in crazy ways. So, one of the safeguards that HIPAA requires is that people who are authorized to have health information of a patient have to ensure the integrity and confidentiality of that information and take steps to protect against reasonably anticipated unauthorized uses or disclosures of people's personal healthcare information. So, when Elliot, Dr. Reed, hands a white coat to the janitor.
Okay, who wants to be me? Craig, you're probably still mad at me. Anyone else?
Dr. Reed, at your service.
Okay, that's a no for Todd. Isn't there anyone here that I can trust to be me?
Hello, I'm Dr. Reed. Dr. Elliot Reed. I'm a doctor.
Has him pose as a doctor, has him read through the patient's chart, engage in all this back and forth with the patient, in disclosing intentionally that patient's medical information to the janitor. She has violated HIPAA. That is not an authorized disclosure of patient's medical information. And the standard here is you only ever disclose patient's information to the minimum amount necessary, essentially, to either provide them with their medical care or handle the insurance back and forth. The regulations that the Department of Health and Human Services has put in place specifically say the minimum necessary to accomplish the intended purpose of the use, disclosure, or request. She has clearly violated that. Nothing required her to do this other than her legitimate discomfort at dealing with a wildly sexist patient. Now,
played by famed character actor John Polite.
Oh, that's one I don't know. Okay.
He's just he's in a bunch of things. You've seen him a bunch of times.
Sure, he looked familiar, but I don't know his name like I know Richard Kind, who's also, big character actor.
Richard Kind is the secondary, tertiary character.
In anything comedic, yes.
Right. He's so good at it.
Now, so this patient's medical records, if presumably this board member will eventually learn that she is Dr. Reed and not the janitor who has just had access to his medical records, what could he do about that? Well, HIPAA doesn't provide any sort of private cause of action. You can't sue the hospital as an individual for violating HIPAA. The Department of Health and Human Services can conduct an investigation and impose penalties. And those penalties are fairly wide ranging. Like there's, initial fine of like $10,000, rising with the level of severity, and capped for whatever reason at $250,000. So once you've had 25 HIPAA violations, you aren't penalized for any more after that, which is interesting. But in particular, so a person who knowingly violates HIPAA is subject to some increased penalties. They can be fined not more than $50,000 or imprisoned not more than 1 year, unless the offense is committed under false pretenses, like someone pretending to be a doctor in order to gain access to medical records, in which case they can be fined not more than $100,000 and face imprisonment for not more than 5 years. And that applies to both Elliot and the janitor. So, like, this one scene in this one episode is a massive violation of the law. To a comical degree. They so efficiently violate HIPAA.
I'm shocked, Geoff. You're saying that not only are both of them going to be heavily liable, but, fired immediately?
Probably, yeah, because I can't imagine what procedures the hospital has in place to prevent the disclosure of patient information, but I am sure she violated it. Now, we'll get to Ted's aptitude and whether or not he is required the hospital to impose,
or lack thereof,
impose such policies. But yeah, I would hope that they are. If you're facing if you did something that warrants potentially 5 years imprisonment, you should maybe not have your job. And that they did it knowingly. Well, Elliot did it knowingly. The janitor probably didn't know that he would be violating HIPAA, but he knew what he was doing. Mm-hmm. And that's what matters. It's not that he knew it was a violation, but he
didn't trick him into wearing a white robe. Right.
He was playing a part in this quite intentionally. Now, what they didn't do, thankfully, there is a third level, that a further heightened level of penalty for violating HIPAA, and that is if you violate HIPAA in order to sell or somehow use the health information for commercial advantage or personal gain, then it's a fine of not more than $250,000 and 10 years imprisonment. So this is a serious violation and goes to what the core of HIPAA is, and that is the unauthorized disclosure of medical information by essentially a healthcare provider. That is not the term used by the statute, but that's what it's talking about.
And it doesn't cover them that he also works for the hospital. There's no protection there.
No, he's a patient. Yeah. Just because you work for the hospital.
I was talking about the janitor.
No, there's actually one of the examples used is that if, for example, something that does not violate HIPAA is if someone unintentionally discloses the information. And the example that's given is if let's say a nurse emails somebody in billing to deal with billing aspects of things, and whatever records they need to handle the billing side of things, and they accidentally include personal healthcare information that they shouldn't have included, so long as the billing person recognizes that it is protected information, lets the nurse or whoever sent the email know that it happened, and then deletes the email, that is not a violation.
Okay.
If that was done knowingly, or if the billing person kept the records,
gotcha,
that would be a violation, because it was not necessary for that person to know that person's that patient's medical information.
Okay.
Yeah, and the janitor certainly didn't need to know this board member's medical information.
Okay.
So bear that in mind whenever anyone, we've decimated the public health system in this country now in the last 6 months. So if we are in another pandemic in the reasonably near future, keep in mind what HIPAA actually is and not what people think it is. And nothing in HIPAA precludes you from asking for someone's medical information. Now, there are certain contexts, Americans with Disabilities Act and things like that, that preclude you from asking about people's disabilities and things like that, but that's not relevant here.
Hi everyone, Derrick here with a brief message. The Not So Grand Jury is sponsored by my law firm, Moore Law PLLC. One of Moore Law PLLC's many practice areas is business law. If you are a business owner or someone who is thinking of starting up a new or side business, you need a legal team who can efficiently provide you legal counsel, keeping you and your business away from potential legal issues, and if necessary, representing you in any disputes that do arise. We pride ourselves on being cost efficient while also getting to know our clients. If you want less stress and more support, you need Moore Law. If you would like to set up a free consult, please click on the link in the show notes, visit our website, www.mooreatty.com, that's mooreatty.com, or email us at contact@mooreatty.com. And now, back to the show.
So now that we've sort of corrected the record on what HIPAA violations are, I would love to talk about this ongoing litigation that starts at the end of the first episode, episode 9, and dives into, pretty much as a good chunk of episode 10, the litigation that was initiated by Harvey Korman with his lawyer, Nina Broderick, against presumably Turk and the hospital, it appears, even though we never actually get confirmation of that, I don't think. We just get Turk's voicemail at the end of episode 9.
Dude, Mr. Korman is suing me, and that Ice Princess is his attorney. When did he get a chance to meet her? What am I gonna do? Call Turk as soon as you get this.
Are you coming in or what?
So he doesn't really say the hospital's being sued, but we assume.
What's the name of the hospital?
Sacred Heart.
Sacred Heart. Okay.
So let's first talk about what medical malpractice is. So malpractice generally is when a professional, that professional can be a healthcare provider, an attorney, who fails to meet the accepted standard of care in the industry, which results in some type of injury, whether it's financial or an actual physical injury or death to their patient, client, whoever it is. When it comes to medical malpractice, obviously it involves a healthcare professional, doctor, nurse, hospital who has failed to meet the accepted standard of care. There are, every state has like slightly different sort of elements of medical malpractice, but the general elements are you have to prove what is called a duty of care, which means that the healthcare provider owed a duty of care to the patient. There was a breach of that. They did not meet the standard of care. There was causation. In other words, that the breach of that duty actually caused the injury that is being complained of, and that they suffered damages, some type of measurable harm or loss as a result of the malpractice. Could be financial. Usually it is financial because it just means they had to have more surgeries or they weren't able to work or whatever. The inability to play tennis is probably not a terribly high level of damages unless you are a professional tennis player, but we will get there in a second. The sort of first issue I want to talk about, because this is sort of how we get introduced to Nina Broderick, is her coming into the hospital waiting room and passing out her business card. Pretty standard. That is not allowed. In fact, most ethics rules that I'm aware of, and I'm aware of both DC and New York because that's where I practice, but I also took a quick look at California, which is supposedly where Scrubs is set. They have a pretty specific rule. It's called Rule 7.3, solicitation of clients, where a lawyer really can't in person solicit services when and I use the quote, a significant motive for doing so is the lawyer's pecuniary gain. And the only exceptions are if they are talking to a different lawyer or if they have a very close personal or professional relationship with the person that they are trying to solicit. There are many cases where you can't just go into a hospital waiting room and just introduce yourself and be like, hey, I'm a med mal attorney. I'm going to sue this hospital for you. Now, she doesn't exactly do that, but she does. A medical malpractice attorney that walks into a hospital and hands her card and then leads to a patient going like, oh, you did the best you can, gets handed the card, I'm going to sue you. That's pretty much not allowed. In fact, a lot of the sort of quote unquote ambulance chasing ethics rules were written because of that. Like people were basically being solicited in their sort of weakest state. So like you had just gotten involved in an injury or did something else where you are now in a very, tough place. that's the worst time for someone to walk up to you and be like, let's sue him right now. Right. So that was one of the reasons why those statutes are there. She 100% committed an ethics violation by doing that.
Agreed. Would it have been an ethics violation if she bought a billboard advertising her firm across from the hospital?
Nope. So that's actually fine, because that is, you are generically saying to the public.
Sure. That is not an in-person solicitation of, yeah. Okay.
That is not considered to be an in-person solicitation. In fact, I think it's actually, I forget if it's in the California statute or if it's somewhere else. I know that is actually one of the examples that's used in the ethics statutes as you can have a public solicitation, a website, whatever, that throws it out there, but you cannot in person sort of actively solicit specific clients. You can go to conferences, you can go to, events. That's fine, because that's sort of assumed. You cannot walk into a hospital in their waiting room and solicit clients in that capacity, unless for some reason the hospital is having some type of convention, and I don't think that ever happens. So I think you're good. So yeah, so the fact that she even got any of her clients would not be allowed. And in fact, the hospital, being private, could have gotten her to leave at any moment. They could have easily said, you need to leave. Even if her father's there, if she is doing active solicitation, they could ask her to leave. And if she wouldn't leave, they could have called up the authorities and had someone remove her. So that could have easily happened. Now, that assumes who is giving the advice to the hospital knows that rule. We're not sure if Ted knows any laws. In fact, he has admitted, and we can drop the clip in here in a different episode, the only reason that he has a license is because he took the bar in Alaska, and most of it has to do with whether or not you can kill seals.
I'm really not what you would call a winner. Oh, sure, I'm a lawyer, but that's only because I took the bar exam in Alaska, and they only have like 4 laws, and most of them are about when you can and cannot kill seals.
But anyway, the whole point of this is that she could have been removed from the hospital, but it would require someone to actually know the rule, which Ted probably doesn't. Now, I will say, Kelso knows that rule real well about refusing to do certain elective procedures to the extent that he basically quotes it verbatim.
Okay, Missy. Knowing damn sure that you'll sue us if the slightest thing should go wrong with this elective procedure, we're going to go ahead and elect not to do it.
You can't do that.
Really? Bob?
Hospitals can refuse treatment on a non-emergency patient. Here's a list of places we can refer you to. Thanks for playing.
Give that a good look.
1, hilarious. 2, probably sort of spot on in terms of like, we don't have to do every single thing you tell us to do. As long as it's not a life-threatening procedure, we can decide, nope, you have to go somewhere else to make that happen.
Yeah.
I will be honest, I didn't look that up. I'm positive that's true, though. But let's get back to the the lawsuit. It sounds like Harvey Korman sued Turk and probably also sued the hospital. That is normal. It is normal for MedMal lawsuits to involve a lot of different people. In fact, most MedMal lawsuits, it seems like they've sued every single human that came near the patient. And that's because they necessarily don't know what happened. Go for it.
Well, I just wanted to note, because Kelso is in the room during the deposition and he's not the one being deposed or an attorney, presumably he is there as a party, and meaning he's a representative of the hospital.
Party or
I think it's
representative,
fair.
right? Representative of the hospital.
Either they're suing the hospital or the show is getting it wrong. Coin flip.
Could go either way. Yeah.
All possible. It could certainly go either way. What I will say is that, and again, none of us are MedMal attorneys, but I've weirdly represented a couple of defendants in MedMal cases where, like, they were sort of tangentially involved for various reasons. We represent them in different things, and then a MedMal case came in, and they're like, hey, we had nothing to do with this. A good example was there was actually a MedMal case where, and this is years ago, and it got settled out a long time before then, where the patient not only had some sort of medical issue, they also slipped and fell in one of the hospital hallways, which they claimed was because a construction company was doing work in the hospital and didn't adequately show that there was something going on years ago, and still do occasionally represent developers, contractors, other things in construction matters. That was sort of a weird hybrid med-mal construction issue. And so we got sort of roped into a med-mal case. As I recall, there were 32 different defendants in that case, because they literally sued every person that came near them. They sued multiple medical facilities. There were some contractors because some doctors... Right. Some doctors are not necessarily hospital employees. They are actually technically independent contractors who have an office there. There was a lot going on. By the way, this may not shock you. That case took forever to settle because no one wanted to do everything and everyone blamed each other.
And I should note, that is a lot of parties, but at the same time, the way the judicial system works, you can't like bring one claim against one defendant for these facts and then not pan out, bring the same claim against another defendant. Like you've got to hit everything at once that arises from one set of facts, so that makes sense when there is both a slip and fall and potentially medical malpractice.
In fact, I have talked to multiple medical malpractice plaintiff attorneys who have said the law requires us to sue everybody, because if we don't, and we miss the statute of limitations or, whatever, then we can get sued. So we kind of have to sue everybody.
For us not to sue everybody.
You still like...
Right.
You still end up with some weird claims occasionally when they're trying to sue everybody. And it's like, why is the bank being sued? Because they have a mortgage on the property or like something like that. Like, it doesn't make any sense.
Right. Right. The joke of you've sued everyone and their mother actually kind of applies, because occasionally you literally sue everyone because they happen to be listed on a chart and they were the nurse for one moment. Like, you never know, right? So to the extent the show gets something right, it is that likely in this situation, Turk would have been sued because he was the doctor performing the surgery. It's likely the hospital would have been sued as being the medical provider and liable for the work that one of their workers did. I'm also going to guess they would have sued every single person in that
every other nurse that set foot in the room, every other doctor that set anyone else who signed off on the medication or something.
Correct. It gets it right, sort of, but there would be a lot of other people involved.
I just want to run through one thing. Richard Kind's character is a hypochondriac. He's described that way in the show. I would think that as a medical malpractice attorney, that is maybe not something that you want to take on, because it immediately calls their credibility into question.
I will say the one thing that he does say, like he's right. He lost the zip on his serve. Like it is, unless he's faking it in the clips we see, it appears true that he's no longer able to serve with his right arm the way he wants to. Whether or not that's malpractice,
sure, yeah,
that
can just happen because he injured his shoulder,
or he got older, or anything. And honestly, if you get reconstructive surgery, we don't know exactly the procedure that was performed, but if you get reconstructive surgery, the expectation is not that it's going to be better than it was or as good as it was prior to the injury. The expectation is they're going to do the best they can to make it better.
Right. It is highly unlikely that your inability as at best amateur tennis player, who sounds like is only playing his own mother and a few other random people, and you don't have the zip on your serve, is probably not something that would give you a whole heck of a lot of damages. It's one of those, like we've talked about cases before, where there might be liability. Maybe Turk screwed up. We actually honestly don't know. Right?
So I'm going to completely go against what I said before. Plaintiff's attorney is going to make the argument that no, he can't use his arm as well as he used to use his arm. So he can't feed himself. He can't dress himself as well, or he has to change how he does that. He has to change his whole life routine. And they're going to call on a million experts about how his quality of life has changed because of this shoulder injury that never fully recovered.
That I would agree with you on that. There is nothing in this episode that shows
all of that could be true, and Turk could have met the standard of care required of surgeans. And
yes.
Yeah. Right. So I think that's actually one thing to get into, is that I know this in New York because I've dealt with this in New York, but I assume this is the case in other states. You typically need to find an expert who is going to testify to say they didn't meet the standard of care. So you need to find another doctor who is able to come in and identify what breach Turk did, right?
Yeah.
Well, it's the surgery they did in Rookie of the Year, right?
Yeah.
Exactly. If they'd done that surgery, he would have been fine.
You will never hear me make a sports movie reference again.
No, it's a movie you watch when you're 5 years old and never again.
Thank you.
Honestly, I'm super proud of you, Geoff. That's a big moment. That's a big moment for the podcast. I think my favorite part of these two episodes is the quote unquote deposition. We would be derelict in our duties if we didn't talk about the ridiculousness of the deposition. So first off, it is a trope. It has happened in, I would say, more episodes than we care to admit, that there is a deposition that makes no sense in terms of timing, where it's being located, who is in the room, what they do in the room.
Yeah. A preponderance
anything.
of the episodes, you might say, have this trope in them.
Honestly, any episode that involves a sort of legalish stuff, we find ourselves doing a deposition that no one seems to understand what a deposition is. So let's talk. So first off, the timing is ridiculous, as is typically the case. In most cases, and this is in fact a civil case, so that we actually know what we're talking about when it comes to a civil case. The order of operations is you file a complaint, the other side gets a significant period of time, usually at least 21 days, if not longer, and normally there's extensions, to file an answer. You then get a schedule of how the case will go. You do document discovery and other things, but then around that time, you start doing depositions. You have to be at least a month or so in before you start doing depositions. There are reasons to do very early depositions, but they require extreme circumstances. Normally someone is like dying. I've never had it happen in
Actually, in a medical malpractice suit might be the most appropriate place for that to happen, but not this one.
Right, not this one. So, right, it could happen in the right circumstances. Right. Someone is, been put on a ventilator and they, it might make sense to do a super quick deposition, but that's not the case here. Especially when you are apparently deposing Turk, we think.
You aren't going to freeze up around her again, are you, Ted?
No chance. I'm drugged up. Plus, if I concentrate, I think I can control the excessive flop sweat I get the second she speaks.
Ted, you ready to get started?
Whenever you're ready, Nina. First off, I'd just like to say that these charges...
We should take a short recess.
Believe me, you're better off.
I agree.
Even though there's no court reporter. So, okay, so let's talk about what normally happens in a deposition. So for those of you who are listening who have never been in a deposition, one, congratulations. It'd be great if you're never in a deposition. As a lawyer, I half the time don't like being in a deposition, even if I'm the one that actually asked for the deposition, because they can be very boring.
Good for billable hours, though.
It's a lot of hours. And you can get some good information out of a deposition, but most of the time you're really just trying to... it's information gathering is what
it is part of discovery.
It is a discovery device is what I like to say. So normally in a deposition, you are going to have the person who is being deposed. They are being put under oath. They have to speak truthfully. You have the lawyer who is asking them questions. And then you have a lawyer who is representing the person being deposed who is there to object. Your objections are relatively... You can object to a very small amount of things under the rules. Typically, it's, you can object to the fact that they are asking for something that's privileged and you shouldn't be able to answer. Maybe they're asking things outside the scope, even though that actually is allowed. You can do that. You can just object to it and save that objection for later. In actuality, there's a lot more objections in depositions. Anytime I defend one of my clients, there's a lot more than just objecting to form, objecting to privilege. I'm annoying as a defending, as a defending lawyer.
I was going to say, better to be annoying to the other side than not, quite frankly.
Correct. Especially if it's a case where like the deposition actually is going to matter. Sometimes you're just like, answer all the questions because we have nothing to hide, but that's rare. But more importantly, there is a court reporter there that is taking down every word that's being said. Sometimes it's also, can be videotaped, but you need someone there who is taking down every word and is going to eventually put it into a transcript that gets put into evidence. That didn't happen here. There is no one there taking anything down. In the deposition room is Turk, who I believe is the deponent, kind of. Dr. Kelso, who I believe is there as a representative of the hospital, we think. Ted, who may be representing both, even though he does, black out at one point. So thanks to Flop Sweat.
Yeah, although that might invite some conflicts of interest where it could easily be such that he cannot represent both of them.
It's very common to have the same party represent the. I shouldn't say very common. It's not uncommon to have an attorney represent both the doctor and the hospital.
Okay.
Well, and I'm going to assume here, Geoff, that Turk is an employee of the hospital. There is probably some form of indemnification that happens when it comes to medical providers.
Okay. Almost certainly their insurance policy is actually what's doing this.
Right. The insurance policy. So what would actually normally happen in this case? So if this was a normal deposition, Ted's not in there. It is it's the insurance. No, he could be in there, but he's probably not doing the actual representation.
The insurance is whoever the insurance hired to be their attorney is going to be the lead. Ted might be there as a secondary for whatever interest the hospital has.
Right. Ted is there as like the GC. He's there to represent his client in the general capacity, but is likely
receiving some of the questions. Like, what are the hospital's policies regarding X, Y, and Z?
I mean, he could easily be a fact witness in these cases. And in fact, one of the other Scrubs episodes, they do basically the whole episode is one of the patients passes away and they're trying to figure out who's at fault. And so they have basically the whole episode is what they call a morbidity and mortality conference is what they call it. It's basically the internal hospital's investigation on what happened. In most states, a lot of that is privileged, which I think makes sense. You want the hospital to be able to voluntarily do these kinds of conferences to sort of figure out what's going on, but you don't want it to be like Exhibit A in a lawsuit, right? And we'll get into that separately. There are going to be situations where effectively the legal counsel of the hospital actually may have more information than, on the fact side rather than the legal side. But the short version is this is not a deposition. Now, some of the things they did are possible. Yeah. And actually, there's one thing I want to ask both of you because I want to actually talk about the showing of the video because that's never happened in any of my depositions, but I think they could technically have done it.
You could show that, yeah. There's no reason not to, I guess. From a strategic point of view, it might be better to hold off on that and be like, show that to the jury and be like, look at how devastating, and they're not going to be prepared for it or whatever. But
I mean, again, if this was a real case, they would have already done document discovery.
Yeah, probably.
And that would have been the first thing you fire in front of them.
Yeah.
If the goal, because we've talked about this before, what is the goal
to
of the
get
litigation?
as much money as possible, yeah,
right?
Is
to get the most money as possible, which normally means, because we've talked about this in a few other cases, where like you want to shine a spotlight on your best evidence. You put it into your interrogatories. You even maybe reference it when you respond to document requests. You want to shine a spotlight on your best evidence to the other side, right? Because generally you don't want to hide that because it's such a trope in TV shows and movies that like there's a big surprise at trial. That is not
generally.
How that
I agree.
works.
I have encountered some situations recently where it's like, all right, we're going to give this over to the other side, but we're not going to do it right away.
Understood. And there are strategic reasons to do so. Here, when you've got let's pretend we're Nina Broderick. Hard to pretend, but let's pretend we're her. You have a hypochondriac client who has been in the hospital 27 times, I believe.
Okay, Mr. Corman, how many visits is this? 27. Okay, for the 27th time, I'm going to ask you to do your therapy and just be patient.
I have a singles match against my mother on Monday. I lose to her, I lose my pride. I'm assuming these Q-tips are complimentary. Your father's going to be just fine. The place is top-notch. I practically live here.
Are you a doctor?
Massive hypochondriac. If you'll excuse me, I have to go harass a surgeon.
And probably is not someone that you'd be like, yeah, I'd love for him to testify. you're probably showing this video very quickly, which is what leads to Dr. Kelso, and he walks out of the room to say, we're settling. That's what you want, right? And really, and so they would have already had this and been aware of it. Honestly, deposition wouldn't even be needed in this case, if you ask me, because they would have shown that to them and been like, are you like, and again, it depends what kind of reasonable request they have in terms of the amount of money they want. And also, does that all go to shit when Carla and Turk are in the waiting room and Harvey Korman says, no, you did a perfectly fine job.
Look, Turk, I know you feel like you did right by him, but you have to acknowledge that Mr. Korman here feels like you let him down.
You know what? I don't feel that way. I know you did the best job you could. But there's something that you should know about me. People hate me. But in tennis, they're forced to interact. So, for 3 hours, 2 Sundays a month, I have friends. You know what I mean?
So what you're saying is that even though you think my husband did a great job, you've decided to crush his spirit by putting a permanent black mark on his medical record over a tennis game?
I fear I've said too much.
Well, there are some ethics issues there where the parties are talking without their attorneys present.
Correct.
And sometimes that's going to happen.
In a hospital, like you have to treat the patient. You can't have.
God, this happened to me recently. Got a new case. Speaking to our client owns a business, and they're like, "Oh, you should call my property manager, so and so. He'll have more details." I call the property manager, get some details. He gives me his email. It's like, "Oh, you're not his employee. You're the other side." It was like a 3-minute conversation. And I realized like what happened, and I contacted the opposing counsel and told them what happened right away and covered all my bases. But it was like, oh, fuck.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah, that wasn't supposed to happen. There is probably some, I don't know if it's ethics issues because none of the attorneys did it.
So the only thing I could think of before was, is there an ethics issue with, what's the plaintiff's attorney's name again? Is there an issue with Nina sleeping with the best friend of the defendant? Probably not, but we don't know if there's like additional communication happening there. Like, is she in their house? Because don't they live together?
Yeah. I mean, she comes out of the bedroom once and...
Needless to say, I was doing everything I could not to rub the relationship in Turk's face. I could probably do more.
Morning. I'll see you at the deposition. I'll try not to spank your lawyer as hard as I spanked him last night.
Bye.
Like, his attorney should probably be present if they're interacting, but...
In certain situations, you're going to have interactions, right?
You walk past each other in the hallway,
depending upon the situation. Right. So anyway, but the whole point of the litigation that I'll get to, then we'll let Mike talk about how shitty of a doctor Doug is nothing that happened in terms of the legal side would have actually happened. Like, she commits ethics violations, the deposition wouldn't have happened as quick as it had. The only thing that would have actually happened is that, they would have sued multiple people, including Turk in the hospital, but also probably 10 other people. So, yes. Mike, tell us about
Before
Doug.
I tell you about Doug's mistakes, I want to say Nina made a huge mistake. Because the doctor that she went after was Turk, when the doctor she should have gone after is Doug. We don't. I don't
just because Doug's
I don't think
present.
in this episode we see too many of his direct mistakes, but it's implied that he's committed serial malpractice by killing off many of his patients. The injuries he inflicts on them have the nickname. Oh, they call that a Doug. And the hospital, to some extent, has finally, after 4 years, decided maybe we shouldn't have him dealing with living patients anymore. And they do smartly decide to finally put him in a morgue where it's much harder for him to commit malpractice. It's much harder for him to commit malpractice against people who are no longer alive.
Not impossible, but yeah.
Yeah, not impossible. If something he does, like he's not able to diagnose some infectious disease that everyone else gets or something, or you can imagine a situation where like he screws something up badly and living people are injured. I will say the thing that I kept thinking about is the hospital's known he's terrible at this for, like, this is season 4, so we presume 4 years now.
Yeah, because he started as an intern with the rest of them, right?
I think so. I watched the very first episode before I watched these two. I haven't watched the show in years, so I don't remember exactly. But I'm pretty sure he's been a background character for years. At the very least, this is not the first time they've been aware of this. So that exposes the hospital to a bunch of liability. So the theory that you would sue the hospital in the situation with Turk would probably be like respondent superior, saying that, like, oh, you're the hospital, you're in charge, he committed negligence while performing his duties, you're responsible for that. There's additional issues involved here, because not only was Doug employed by them, they knew he was incompetent, and they kept him employed and kept him treating living patients and presumably killing them. So they had their own additional negligence or recklessness because they didn't do anything to stop that. I will say I always enjoyed the character of Doug, and there were some fun little details that popped up when I was looking at him. Do you want to know what he's doing right now?
Ooh,
he's a lawyer.
I'm excited.
Interesting.
He went to law school, boys. Yeah.
That's outstanding.
There's a scene in this season, I guess later in the season, where he didn't want to be in the show any longer because he broke both of his legs skiing. So they just wrote that into the show. Yeah, they're like,
oh, no way,
wheeling him around because he broke both of his legs.
I actually remember that episode. That's
this
really
is a very
funny.
Doug thing to do. Yeah,
that's hilarious.
So, those are my thoughts on Doug. Mostly, like, he was incompetent, but really the hospital was also super incompetent by keeping him around this long.
Well, yeah, I mean, if you go through seasons 1 through 3, there are about, at minimum, 40 opportunities they have to be like, no, you can leave now.
You should not be a
Thank
doctor.
you. Well, it also makes you wonder how he got through med school.
I don't know.
Med school doesn't necessarily involve the pressure that actual practice of medicine involves, much like the practice of law is more stressful than.
Yeah, maybe he's just really good on the exams and everything else, and then the practical stuff he bombed, and it just averaged out to being a passing grade.
I'm going to allow you guys to
Sure,
stuff, but I just don't think
It's a fictional character.
Yeah.
It's a fictional, right.
I just thought it was very cute that he's an attorney now.
In Chicago, interesting.
Question. So, and by the way, what the heck? What is it called if someone works in the morgue?
So his title
Medical
later
examiner?
becomes later that he gets the title pathology attending, but that's in season 5.
Oh, pathologist.
But I don't actually know what his title is at this point, because he's technically still a resident, right?
Yeah.
I think because Elliot is chief resident at this point.
Yeah.
So.
Right. So he's probably just a resident. But having a cousin who is in fact a pathologist, I can tell you this is not how you become a pathologist. You're not a bad doctor who knows how people die and you become a pathologist.
I do kind of like the idea that, like, doctors
you,
are sorted by quality by the field.
Right. If you're a pathologist, you're such a bad doctor that you just know how you've killed people, so you become a pathologist. That's not really how it works. I love that concept, and I love how Scrubs basically, like, if you're in the basement, you're just a shit doctor who we threw you down there and you can deal with the dead people. And that is a trope that keeps going for the next like 5 seasons of Scrubs, is like, Doug's too late to a patient and rigor mortis has set in. So the patient is like at a 90-degree angle and he can't get him into the body bag.
So in SVU, if you're a medical examiner or a pathologist, you are an expert in everything. In Scrubs, you are the exact opposite of that.
Well, and let's be honest, in SVU, not only are you an expert in everything, you also have the time to sit at trial and listen to all the testimony before you testify, which is how that works.
Nuts. Doug is a witness in Law and Order, just accidentally killing people.
They make him out to be the expert in everything, and he's actually a complete moron. Actually, he's not far away from that like Big Bang Boom guy or whatever the hell he was.
Yeah.
Oh God!
Wow.
Deep cut.
Drop that clip in.
I'm on it. Hey, Bing Bang Bong.
Now you know what I'd have to deal with.
Like, I could see them being the same guy.
Yeah, could have been the same actor.
I'm now trying
All
to
right.
create in my head a mashup of I'm No Superman and the Law and Order theme song.
I gotta be honest, that theme song for Scrubs really does like. So I don't know when you guys started watching this. I was watching it like freshman year of college. I was in somebody's dorm room and they had a bunch of the DVDs and we were just like binging a bunch of them. And that little, we can put the clip of I'm No Superman in.
I'm no Superman.
Just like warms my heart. It's like, it feels good watching that.
Yes.
Sure.
Yes. Because it premiered 2001. I don't think I watched it a lot in high school. I watched a lot of reruns.
I don't think I
college.
watched. Maybe I caught an episode. I don't know if I watched any of this when I was in high school. Did see Garden State whenever that came out.
I keep forgetting you both are younger than me.
But watched this in college a lot. There was that moment in time where we thought Zach Braff was going to be like a huge star, and then he did Scrubs and Garden State and nothing else.
Well, it's because he went onto the behind the other side of the camera. Like he does a lot of directing. He does a lot of directing.
Other than Garden State, what has he directed?
He television.
So multiple episodes of Ted Lasso.
Okay.
So he works a lot with Bill Lawrence. So him and Bill Lawrence are besties. So if Bill Lawrence does something, he probably has either acted in it or directed it. Or
I saw him in. There's a show that came out like a year or two ago. Was it Bad Monkey? Yeah, and that was like the last thing I've seen him in years. And he was just like the fifth named actor or something on that.
Yeah, he's got some very interesting acting roles, but in terms of like directing, I know he's directed stuff on Ted Lasso. He directed stuff on Shrinking, which also is a Bill Lawrence thing.
Never got into Shrinking.
And actually, I think he was an actor in Alex Inc., which I think was a relatively terrible show, but I'm told he was pretty good in it. That was like 2017, 2018. So yeah, he's done some random things. I think he enjoys being more of the behind the camera like strategy side guy. At least that's what I got out of the Scrubs podcast that I listened to between him and Donald, which was really interesting. And again, give me more Johnny C.
One episode of Ted Lasso.
I'm so excited.
Randomly a voice in Obi-Wan Kenobi. Interesting.
Sure. We all do random things. I think we've hit them sort of the big highlights. Is there anything else you guys wanted to talk about?
I enjoy the show. I would love to like go back and watch some of this, but I remember getting tired of it at a certain point. Like it was a lot of the same bits.
Okay, so I'm just gonna say I'm a huge Scrubs fan. Any Scrubs fan knows that season 9 wasn't real. So I will say season 9. So I would watch any episode of Scrubs. I was whatever, and then I remember watching when it came out, season 9, and being like, "What the hell did they do to my show?" I'll still watch it, but I'm not happy about it. But as for this episode, love these episodes. I love the characters. I think it's a really interesting and excluding the Pit, which is sort of the newest medical drama out there, which I'm told is about as accurate as humanly possible. Like they literally created a hospital as their set,
and has some legal controversy around it.
Yeah,
there is some legal controversy around it, and I do think we need to get into that, and that could be another future episode.
I don't know if I followed it as closely as you guys. It was a former hospital that was out of commission, and they took it over for the set for the whole time, right?
Scrubs or the Pit?
Yeah,
Scrubs. Yes.
Oh, the Pit. Oh, okay. Is there something about the Pit that we're sorry?
So Scrubs is mostly a soundstage. They do have the building they filmed from, I believe, was either
because I know it was because they had the issue when they were filming that occasionally people would try and come and get medical care, and they had to make a bunch of signs saying this is not a real hospital.
The whole point I was saying was the Pit currently is one of the most realistic things out there. When it came out, Scrubs was, other than the ridiculousness that happens occasionally, it's actually medically accurate a lot of times. Obviously there's times where they go ridiculous.
There's a musical episode.
Whatever. Well, yes, which is also one of my favorite episodes, by the way. It's a fantastic episode. But it was actually decently medically accurate at the time. I loved it. It definitely gets a positive for me when it comes to the entertainment. No on the law. Just no. We didn't get there. No parts of the litigation make any sense. Doug should have been fired. Well, let's see. We're 3.5 seasons in, so he should have been fired 3.5 seasons ago. And and like, let's be honest, Scrubs has never been great on the legal side. Is it possible to have a lawyer who is the general counsel of a hospital that's as bad as Ted? Theoretically, but probably not. Because I don't think that hospital would exist anymore. At least they wouldn't be able to
they would get
insurance.
sued a lot.
So anyway, definitely yes in the entertainment, no on the law. Guys?
Mike, take it.
I agree. I enjoyed the show. I'm like, it's still, it scratches that same nostalgic itch, and maybe it's because I watched it when I was younger, and I don't know if I would enjoy it. Like, if somebody came to the show fresh now, I'm not sure how much they would like it. It does seem a little dated, but I liked it. So yes on the entertainment. No, it got everything wrong in the law. They got everything it could get wrong. Jeffrey?
Yes, through college, watched a fair amount of this. I think I had a couple of seasons on DVD. It's been a long time. I mean, it's been since then since I've watched it. I haven't done a rewatch ever. And in watching these 2 episodes, I don't know why I liked this show.
Oh.
Maybe these aren't representative episodes.
No, this is representative.
Okay,
this is
because
like
did not laugh once.
I would say the show is like this is very much the average episode.
Okay. Yeah, so I'm not going to go back and rewatch Scrubs.
Okay.
So what you're saying is, Geoff, is that you're dead inside.
I messaged some friends of mine and said, has this not aged well? Have I just aged out of this? Why did I like this show? And some of them chalked it up to, well, I'm doing a, nitpicky analysis show, a podcast of the show now and not just watching it for fun. But there's plenty of other stuff we've done for this show that I still enjoy, even having nitpicked it and saying that the law is bad, but it's still a ton of fun. But I'm a no on both.
So these episodes on IMDb are an 8.0 and an 8.1 respectively.
Okay.
Which actually is like a little bit below average for the season. Maybe right about average for the season, actually.
So I will say Scrubs is interesting because a lot of Scrubs, especially starting in like seasons 4 onward, a lot of the episodes are sort of who is the guest and how is the guest. Because there's a lot of arcs that happen, like Elizabeth Banks comes in for like an entire season or so.
I was looking
like
through this and I saw like Tara Reid pops up.
Oh yeah,
I mean, like Tara Reid pops up here or there. Heather Graham has a arc. And then there's like random 1 episode arc. So like Michael J. Fox has a 1 episode arc, or maybe a 1 or 2 episode arc. Who interestingly plays a doctor.
Oh yeah,
who,
I remember. Okay,
Yes. And he's like, he basically is a doctor that's so good at what he does because he's got, OCD basically. Scrubs has some very interesting guest stars that I actually do think color the episodes. Because, like, let's be honest, if you don't like Nina, that's going to color your thought of these 2 episodes.
I suppose, yeah.
Right. And I do think she's one of my least favorite characters.
She just didn't leave any impression on me.
As a guest star.
Kind of bland.
No.
Like,
yeah. I don't love. As good as Richard Kind is as an actor, his character kind of blows.
I was going to say for the Nina thing, like the most notable thing is like the weird dom sub relationship she has with JD, and that apparently JD has with any powerful woman.
Yeah.
Like the most notable thing about her character is like JD has a weird interaction with women. Like not nothing about her character really.
Yeah. I mean, I get that. I still loved it despite both
I mean,
those
to each
things.
their own. I just didn't, it didn't strike me the same way that it did, 20 years ago.
One of the things I love about the episodes is like when the janitor goes off and does his weird, like fun.
Why was Turk
rants and stuff.
painting his hands blue and putting handprints all over the walls? Is that
to mess with the doctor? Mess with the janitor.
Was that a running gag through the
to mess with the janitor?
Do either of you have any context, or was that just these episodes a random thing Turk was doing?
He framed the janitor for getting handprints everywhere, so then the janitor was getting in trouble, but really it was Turk. So then the janitor was going after Turk and gave his number to Richard Kind.
Okay.
Right. So like the ongoing trope / bit is that the janitor hates JD.
Right. No, I
sort of
remember that.
Screw
It
with
was-
each other. And this was Turk trying to get back onto the janitor for something. It's very specific and required a lot of things to happen at the right time.
These shows were not known for their realism.
I guess I'm okay. I guess I'm curious whether there was setup for that in these episodes that I missed, or if it was set up in prior episodes. And okay.
Some of the episodes that are my favorite are the ones where like the janitor does some hilarious stuff, and it's you find out when you watch the Scrubs podcast that and they interview Bill Lawrence that some of the scripts would just say Neil does something funny. He doesn't actually have any lines. It's just you turn the camera to the janitor and the janitor does something ridiculous. And I honestly think he's one of my favorite characters in the entire.
I do remember.
thing.
I remember his
think-
role
yeah.
as being very entertaining, and I know him only from this and The Fugitive, which this references.
I mean, he-
other
he
episodes
has a
of Scrubs reference that.
Yeah, he got another sitcom right after this.
Malcolm in the Middle
Oh,
was
he
his
was
sort
Malcolm
of
in the
big thing
Middle,
after
okay.
this.
No, it wasn't
That
the
was-
middle. It was the middle, not Malcolm
was
in the Middle.
Yeah, Malcolm in the Middle was Bryan Cranston in the 90s.
Yeah.
Yep. So it's the middle. Ah, yes, that makes sense. I didn't watch either of them. So
I watched Malcolm in the Middle. Again, enjoyed it at the time, but I was a teenager, so who the hell knows?
Well, yeah, and I think it was like he went right into the middle because like Scrubs ended 2009, and that's when the middle started for like 9 seasons. So he basically jumped. Again, we're getting into the Scrubs podcast because it was my COVID listen was the Scrubs podcast, and the janitor was supposed to be a figment of JD's imagination. So season 1, they never actually interact or he doesn't interact with any other character, but they love Neil Flynn so much that they turned him into an actual character. I think someone has discovered that's incorrect. There's like 1 or 2 times that he like interacts with someone, but the general gist was that like he only interacts with JD, and that was like 98% of his interactions in season 1 are just him and JD.
It is,
which is kind of funny. And then they loved his character so much they just kept him in. Anyway, good times, great oldies, not legally accurate.
Not at all.
I'll still
Good
later,
talk,
boys.
Neil.
The Not So Grand Jury is sponsored by Morwa PLLC.
The opinions expressed in the Not So Grand Jury are those of the hosts themselves and not of their respective employers.
The theme music for the Not So Grand Jury is from Gustav Holst's Jupiter and is in the public domain.
If you'd like to get in touch with us, if you want to suggest future movies, or even if you want to offer corrections, you can email us at notsograndjury@gmail.com or message us on any of our social media accounts.
The Not So Grand Jury is copyright 2026, all rights reserved.